get going on. So yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining our talk, from bias to belonging. Well, let me move on to the next slide so that you can see the talk title. And I wanted to mention before we get going, there is a little background and the reason why we came up to create this talk content, because we both wanted to create the inclusive tech communities, because without the communities, how you're going to survive when you have questions, when you want to, discover the new products. Community is the center core of where we are, working and improving our skills, right? So this talk is literally for everyone. Let me, emphasize about that. And before we going, let me introduce about myself, and my colleague Josefine can introduce about herself too. So my name is Arisa Fukuzaki. I'm originally from Japan, but I'm living in Germany and working from Germany. So I'm a developer relations engineer at Storyblok, and I'm an ambassador at Girl Code. It's an organization based in the UK to empower women and non-binary, folks to join the tech world. And also, I'm a GDE in web technology. So yeah, I would hand over to you, Josephine.
Thank you, Arisa. Yeah, so this is going to be really quick because actually 99% of the stuff is basically identical. Hi, my name is Josephine. I'm also part of the DevRel team. I'm also a Girl Code ambassador, also GDE for web technology. So there's really a lot of overlap. And actually, little shameless plug. So Arisa, another friend of ours, Alba, and me, we're doing a stream that's monthly. If you're curious in joining us, we talk a lot about community and all things tech. So you can join us here. You're going to see we're from the 90s. We love QR codes. So there's going to be a lot more QR codes, actually. Actually, let me hop to the next one, because if you wanted to follow along with the slides on your own machine, or maybe that's more convenient for you, feel free to scan the QR code. You'll get a PDF of the slides. And there's a bunch of resources in the end. So if you find something interesting, it's going to be there in the end again. So don't worry about any of it. And just in terms of what we're going to do, we're going to talk a little bit about bias. We're going to have some interactive examples where you all get to scan more QR codes and participate a little bit. And we're going to have a look at some more practical things that maybe you can take away for your own communities to see how you can make people feel like they belong. Right, Arisa, let me hand it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Josephine. So first of all, we want to make sure that we have the good fundamental knowledge about the information and the terminologies that we are going to describe and use in this talk. So to get started, first of all, to know the difference in between bias and stereotypes, because those two things are very similar. And even myself, while I was creating the talk content, I realized that in detail, I had so many things, had to catch it up. So for you, we want it to be interactive and also as easy as possible to break down, to explain, let's say, the difference in between. To get started, I wanted to pick something relevant to everyone in this space. So think about bias and stereotypes. They're actually everywhere. And that's something also, we receive day-to-day life as developers. So here's the first thing. I wanted to ask you all in here, so you can shout out or, say out loud. So what do you think about, what people imagine about our personality? I mean to say developers' personalities. Any ideas?
Introverts, yeah.
Yeah.
Something else? Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. We're not going to bite you.
Shy, yeah.
Shy, yes. That's one of the good ones. Funny.
Oh,
yes.
I love that. I
like that. I heard one more. Sorry?
Did you say virgin?
I really like that.
Nerds, yeah.
Nerds, yeah. Actually, I listed up a couple of, let's say, elements that you hear from the others, describing about you. So yeah, you could relate to what we heard in here. Maybe some of the elements are correct, fitting at least like what you like or what you do. In fact, I love, like manga, anime stuff. I'm quite otaku geek, but I'm not unsocial. Otherwise, I'm not gonna be on stage, I guess. And hackers, I cannot hack things. So you have a couple of elements that probably fit with your kind of things you do, but not all of them. And you don't want to be labeled by these elements, right? And these labels, including the one you also shared with us in here, these are stereotypes. So in the next slide, Josefine is going to tell you more about the clear difference in between stereotypes and bias.
Yeah. So we already had a look at the stereotypes that may or may not apply to you, right? And those are usually things that you have like a preconceived idea. It's probably a little bit simplified. It's definitely exaggerated. But usually it's intentional. You know it's a stereotype, and you can kind of like reflect on that, right? And so you can think of it as the tip of the iceberg, if you will. It's conscious. Whereas biases are mostly unconscious, and it's similar. Whereas it's a preconceived idea, but it's your internal tendency for one thing or another, or whether you maybe like a person or a topic, but it's unconscious. And so it would be something like, I don't know, maybe you have a stereotype that all gamers, all programmers are super smart, and so you will ask them unconsciously about all the other stuff, and when they say something, you will trust them, right? Because you think they're very smart, and that would be the bias part, where it's like you didn't think about it, basically. And it's important to separate these two. And now if you're thinking like, that doesn't sound super useful, where did it actually come from? Biases actually came from the old days, right? So when you had to like really quickly decide whether something is helpful and you can maybe eat it, or whether it's going to kill you in the next second. So you had to really quickly make decisions to save your own life. And that's where kind of the intuition for bias comes from. And that if you feel like maybe now I'm kind of singling you out and say like, hey, you have bias, and you have bias, and you have bias. No. We all have bias. Arisa and me have biases too, right? So we're not saying it's a bad thing, but we have to like actually be conscious of it. And we're all in this together. So if you're now thinking like, okay, now I know, we all have it, if we're all the same, why should I even care about this? Well, it can have really negative implications if you make these preconceived assumptions about people, about things. Think about, for example, the medical world, where this could actually literally hurt people, right? And even if you now think about your job or your organization, there's a bunch of things in which this is going to be really difficult, right? Maybe you're not going to have as diverse teams if you don't include unconscious bias training in your hiring. That's going to lower performance. It's going to like up the turnover because maybe people don't feel super welcome, and it's going to lead to a lot of missed opportunity, right? So even if you just look at it from a business perspective, it's not going to do you any good to ignore it. And maybe you'll end up with something like this, where all your team looks the same, and you're kind of wondering why there's nothing new coming up. In German companies, we sometimes say we have more guys named Thomas in the management department than women, and this is something you want to avoid if you want to put your business forward, right? So actually, Arisa, let me hand it back to you.
All right, thank you, Josephine. So I hope that now we have pretty much good understanding the difference in between bias and the stereotypes. And now I'm going to give you a couple of examples that, again, we can relate to, like our own experience as developers. So bias is everywhere, and bias, of course, towards to the developers are everywhere too. So here are some of the examples. Maybe you could take it as funny, or maybe you could take it like, oh yeah, I've been there. So let me show you from this one. So, example of what people think we developers do and the reality. Maybe the sound might not come up, but I hope you can get the point. Yeah, the sound is not coming. but you can imagine like music is going on, and that's what people are thinking we are doing day-to-day life. Oh yeah, we can hack anything. And then here's the thing, reality. Oh yeah, yawning sometimes, getting lost, where we were at. Yeah, we've been there. Yeah, wondering like, yeah, when it's gonna end. But yeah. So now you saw some of the, let's say, funny scenes, and I really want to appreciate Rita Iglesias because she's creating very amazing, video content, and she's an amazing developer and an amazing actress. And moving on to the next one. So it's even getting a bit better. What our family and friends think we can do. So imagine that your family and friends came down to you like, hey, can you help me now? Because my fridge just got broken. And then you wonder why, like, okay, I'm happy to help you, but why are you asking me now to fix it? And then they're like showing you with the nice, shiny smile, like, yeah, because you're a developer. And then you get even more confused, like, okay, that's not the reason why you can come down and ask me. And then they suddenly realize, like, why you cannot help me because you're a developer. So, I mean, there are some funny moments, but based on that, I hope that you could relate to some of your own experience about the bias towards the developers from the other people. So we can say that bias actually creates the wrong images of the people, and people might think about like what we can do, but that's not related to what we actually can do or do.
Yeah, so you could, in developer terms, again, say it's kind of like a bug from some old legacy code that we don't really need anymore, right? And so what do we do with it? We're developers. We want to fix bugs so that we can get rid of them, right? And, well, I mean, that's a hard thing to say, but a really ambitious one, so that's really good if you want to fix it. And luckily, we can kind of start in our own backyard, because every industry is biased. Our world is definitely no exception. And one thing to point out is that it really hits the minorities the hardest. And so if we have a look at some demographics in tech, we'll really quickly see who the minorities, who the majorities are, right? So we're going to have a look at the Stack Overflow and the State of JS Journey survey. You maybe know them, big surveys that come out usually every year, and they kind of talk about industry trends. I always get very excited when I see them. It's kind of fun to see what other people like working with. And then you look at the demographics, and I personally get a little bit sad. You'll see in a second why. But that's what we're going to use today. And so, for example, we always compare the two, but the results are super similar. You see in terms of gender, the people who answered the survey is like, in State of JS, it's 70% men, and in Stack Overflow, it's 91% men, right? So you see a big majority right there. If you look at race and ethnicity, you will see that the majority of people answering the survey was or is white. And looking at the age distribution, we'll see that a lot of the folks, the numbers are quite small, but a lot of the folks answering the survey are relatively young, at least from where I'm standing. So they're 25 to 34, right? So if we kind of sum that up, like maybe you don't have to say out loud, but maybe think to yourself, right? Like how many of these boxes do you tick? Are you part of the majority? Did you ever think about that in that way? And how would you describe a dev if you think about like what we've just seen from the demographics, right? It would be a white dude between 25 and 34. Maybe wearing a GitHub t-shirt or another t-shirt that they got at a conference. So is that accurate? Would you say that represents us as a community? Sort of, I guess, right? Ish. It was really, really hard to figure out like accurate data on the general demographics of the tech community. And even like both of the surveys, they admit that this is not great, and they're like thinking about how to change it. It's definitely true that there's, for example, more men than women in the tech industry. Is it 5% or whatever was in the survey before? Probably not quite, right? But we couldn't find like super accurate data. Some statistics say 20%. So it's still a minority. And it's just something to think about. We wanted to point this out because it's great to work with data. It's going to help us a lot. But we need to be careful and kind of see if it's really representative. And especially if we look at the state of JS, also ask people where they're from. They're answering the survey. And you see there that a lot of people are from the US, from Germany, from France, from the UK. And it's funny because you would think like a very small country like Germany, for example, compared to India or Brazil, who are like massive countries, you would think you have more respondents from those countries, right? So we see here that the data is a little bit skewed and maybe it's not fully representative of the global community. So just something to put out there, basically. And so if we've now identified who's the minority and who's the majority, we could start thinking a little bit about like, what does that do to the minority, right? So if you are part of the majority and you've never, maybe you're a white dude who's really young, that's like, I mean, that's great if you have never had to think about how other people feel or that you are part of a big majority. But now is a good time to start, right? You could try figuring out, like maybe some people thrive under pressure and maybe it's really like they don't mind being the only one of their kind, if you will, in air quotes, but other people might really feel a lot of pressure. It's a lot of like mounting up unconscious bias. It's kind of projected on them. Maybe people see them as like representing their group. And so that's really going to force them in a lot of maybe uncomfortable situations. You never know, right? So this is just something to think about and how to make them comfortable. And now to wake you up after your lunch blues, there's some exercises that Arisa prepared for you.
All right. So from now on, I want to make it more interactive so that, you know, like we could try and practice what we learned right now in here, not later. So to join these quick exercises, you can scan this QR code, and it will be, you know, like directing to the Slidos. So I'm actually going to show you the Slido screen to see the results together, and then let's say like see the comparison in between the different options that you're going to choose. And just for your information, the vote you're going to vote, it's going to be completely anonymous. So don't worry about that. The names are going to be displayed. It's completely anonymous. All right. I hope everyone scanned the QR code. And let me move on to the Slido screen. OK. So this is the first question or the exercise we want to try out. Let me read it, this exercise. So imagine that you're at the conference booth, or in general conference, like today in CityJS Conf Berlin. So you spotted one booth which looks very interesting, and their product is something quite new to your knowledge. So you went there and asked, you know, people at the booth to show the product demo. And the person who showed you the product demo and explained you everything was a nice young lady. And you're so impressed, so many information that you could get, and you're so motivated that want to try out this product after. So you decided to make a comment before you leave this booth. So here are the options that you can vote. A, you said to her, this nice young lady, you don't look like a developer, but it's super amazing how you were, you know, like showing me this nice product and explain me everything. B, don't make any comments about her appearance, even though you wonder that maybe she's not a developer, but highly skilled or trained to explain or showing demos to you. I would give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's see the results together. All right. So I see more votes into B. Don't make any comments about her appearance, even though you wondered. And a few votes into A as well. So let's see the comparison in between. So I'm going to start from the the one we have more votes. So don't make any comments about appearance. This is something which is really good approach, I would say, because before you make a comment for anything else, if you take one quick second to process what you're going to say out loud, it will save you and the other person who were talking to you to prevent having uncomfortable, let's say, situation. So I would say like the option B would be something that you would be able to feel more comfortable to communicate with this person, and this young lady who showed you the demo also would feel comfortable probably. Let's imagine that if you pick the option A, well, it depends on the person, but maybe this young lady might feel that, are you maybe saying this comment that I don't look like a developer? Is it because of my appearance, or is it because I'm a woman? So probably she's going to have a little bit uncomfortable moment and would get confused to think about how to respond to that, or even would lose the chance to respond anything. So I hope that you were able to practice in a good way from the first exercise. And let's move on to the second exercise. Let me hide that and move on to the second one. So the second exercise is about the culture. So let me read this exercise. So imagine that in your company, there was a new colleague who joined just recently. So, oh, sorry, why I see the results already. Okay. And he's from Korea, and he's a man. And it's first time for you to, like meet this nice new colleague at the company. So you decided to greet him in a nice way. And here are the options that you can vote. A, you greet him with what you watch in the movie with this. B, you ask him nicely how to greet in his cultural way. So I would give you another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see the results. Okay, I see more votes on option B. So let's imagine first from this option B. So you made sure, first of all, to ask him what will be the correct way to respect his culture to greet. I would say this is something would be really great approach, because if you're not sure from the information what you watched, it's always good to double check, right? It's also something you could relate to like in your work. If you're not sure like what you're doing is fine or not, you would ask the review, or you would probably like request for the pair programming sessions. That's similar to that. So this nice new colleague would feel more comfortable. And let's imagine that if we chose the option A, you greeted with what you watched from the movies. It, again, depends on the person. Maybe some of the people would feel like, oh, that's cute. But maybe some of the people would feel like, that's not universal in all Asian countries to greet with this way. And I feel a little bit offended. So yeah, again, being careful and adding extra step to process in your mind, or even double check with the other person you're talking to, would help you to avoid having the uncomfortable situation for you and for the others. All right. Let's move on to the last exercise. So the last exercise is about hiring. Imagine that you're a manager in your team, and you have 2 candidates in the process with the equal qualifications and skills. But there's only one slot to fill the position. You need to make a decision to choose just one candidate, but you're feeling geared towards to the male candidate. So here's the things. A, you go with your gut, and you hire the candidate, Boris, who looks just like you. Option B, you challenge your bias and try to include as many as more opinions so that you will be able to have more, objective, decisions based on the opinions. I would give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see the results together. Oh, nice. I see like more, like, how should I put this? Like not too huge gap in this example. And let's think about from the option B, which we got more votes. So you challenge your bias, right? So in the beginning of this talk, as we mentioned, everyone has bias. Not, there's no exceptions. So you're aware of that, and you try to ask, as many as opinion to make it more inclusive team and the work environment, so that you would probably be able to avoid, having, the same type of the people just looks like you to, seek for the fresh ideas that might be difficult to come up with. And let's imagine the other option, A. Let's say that you went with your gut and hired the person who just looked like you. Probably, I would say it might end up looking like this. Let me present that again. All right. There were a few backups in case if the slideshows didn't work, but this is what I wanted to say. So in the last hiring exercise, the point is, we talked about in the beginning, we want to avoid having this kind of work environment. And, well, it is because bias could impact to the business also. And if you need a new, fresh ideas, it's more wise to challenge your bias and include different type of the people, not just people who look like you. And I guess I'm going to hand over, to move on to the next slides to Josefine.
Thank you, Arisa. Yeah, we hope you had some fun with the quiz. And also, maybe this was easy for you, right? Maybe it was super obvious. Maybe you got it all right. Great. Spread the word. Like, we would not ask these questions if this wasn't things that are happening every single day. And if you're curious about any of the incidents, come to our booth and chat afterwards. It's all real life, right? So if it was easy, good. And also, yeah, we're all learning every day, right? So don't take it personal if you got something wrong. There is no right or wrong that way. We only had a limited amount of time, and so we weren't able to cover all the different kinds of biases that there are, right? There's so many more. There's confirmation bias. Like, if you already have an opinion, you will look for things that confirm that. There's things like the horns or halo effect. So if somebody did something that you don't like, you're going to associate rather bad things with them. Or maybe they are really good at one thing, and then you think, oh, they're going to be really good at the other thing as well, right? So there's a lot more, and it's really something to dig into. If you're curious, check out the resources. There's a lot more that we tend to forget about and that we were able to cover today. And so if you wanted to take anything of this away for your own work, for your community, for your team, one of the most important things is to listen, right? Talk to people, find out what they want, and also remember they're not representative of their community. First of all, they're representative of themselves, right? So you can only learn and gain from these perspectives. Challenge your own biases and question stereotypes. It's maybe a little bit painful sometimes to admit that you're wrong, but it's a way to grow, right? You have the whole internet at your disposal, so there's no excuse not to educate yourself about different kinds of communities. Go ask for feedback. Again, can be painful, but it's totally worth it to learn. And we've seen that data and structures can really, really help, but we need to be a little bit careful in examining whether it's actually, or what that data looks like and what it's telling us. And then you can accept your own biases. And again, like I just said, right? Like, if this is already on top of your mind, spread the word. Like, let others know and try to create an environment in which people can call you out as well and say like, hey, actually, the decision you made, I feel like maybe you were biased, right? So try to welcome that into your community to make sure everybody feels good to share feedback, right? And speaking of feedback, let me hand it back over.
Thank you. So it's almost the end of our talk, but before we, completely end our talk, I would like to ask you a little favor. So please share with us any feedback, any comments after watching our talk. Simply, it's because we want to keep improving our talk content. And yeah, this is one of the first times that we provide, let's say, like this talk. So yeah, we want to know about like your opinion. How did you feel like? What did you learn? What did you like? What you didn't like? So any kind of open feedback and comments are welcome. And we are not going to use, let's say, your feedbacks on publicly. This is only simply for us to keep improving the talk content. All right, so with that, I want to say thank you. And if you're interested in to have a look at the resources that were used on our talk, this is, again, another QR code. You know that we really love QR code. Yeah. But yeah, you will find pretty much interesting articles and the statistics over there. So yeah, I would say like, thank you so much again for joining our talk. And yeah, let's enjoy the rest of the